那接下来的讲座把我们的焦点移转到 AMD 身上，然后呢，因为我们觉得游戏开发者的最佳使命就是让我们的游戏能够有非常好的游戏体验，所以呢，开发者可以用 AMD 的先进技术，然后为玩家带来更好的游戏的一些品质啊，或者是画质，再来是效能等等的。所以呢，我们在今天非常荣幸邀请到3位讲者，瑞英端 Oscar 跟Jun Yoshino 上台，谢谢 ，Welcome， 请大家给予热烈的掌声。
Hello everyone. Thank you for your time today and thank you for the warm welcome. Today, a couple of us are here from AMD Japan and we'd like to tell you about what we do in terms of developer relations and developer support.
All right, chat, here we go.
Here's a quick video for you.
Got the game on slash on lock. Dedication, prepare for me lock. Cracking tools, grinding on the concrete. I go show them that me on the block. Run them, all that boss. See them times I run to my boss. See them times I beg them for favors when I don't get the food from my pots. Table don't turn, with the big friend, but the bridge don't burn. Game face on. Game face on. They're really on.
Let's go, baby. I know what it is.
First of all, I like to just do a quick intro to myself. My name is Jun Yoshino. I'm based in Tokyo, Japan, and I'm a developer relations manager for APAC. I've had around 20 years experience in the games and the tech industry. I was a producer at places like Sega and Sony PlayStation. I hope you recognize some of the games that I have worked on in the past. And I specialize in product development as well as business development, partnerships, project management, and mainly my role involved some form of bridging the gap between Asian and Western business cultures. So quick top line update on what AMD is up to. So our technology and our hardware is implemented in various solutions, so you see on the screen here. And for the main focus for most of you here would be gaming, desktops and laptops, and more recently, handheld gaming machines that have been gaining popularity recently with devices such as Steam Deck and the Asus ROG Ally. And also, as many of you would know, that our custom chips are also within the main gaming consoles of today, like Xbox and PlayStation. So here's our CPU lineup at this time. As you know, we've got the Ryzen 7000 series, which is the most recent Zen 4 architecture. And then there's variants of that for mobile and also processors with built-in graphics as well. There's also Threadripper, which many of you probably will be interested in. Very, very useful for developers working on Unreal Engine. And we did, I think it was a Computex in 2021 where our CEO, Dr. Lisa Su, did a surprise announcement on 3D V-Cache technology, which is an amazing breakthrough in CPU technology where we stack extra SRAM onto the die to vastly increase L3 cache, which as a result for gaming is extra performance in terms of frame rate. So the Zen 4 architecture is our current latest line of CPUs. And you know, we support a new AM5 platform for that, which is supporting DDR5. So you get, it is supporting the latest technology and delivering you the best possible performance for gaming with these CPUs. And then the 3D V-Cache technology, I'm sure some of the PC and CPU enthusiasts among you would know that this is an extra L3 cache stacked on top of the existing die of the CPUs of the 7000 series. The first iteration was on the 5800X3D, but now 3D V-Cache is available on our 7000 series, and you would probably see many benchmarks. We found that on average, the 3D V-Cache can provide anything around 50% increased performance across many games. And then our RDNA 3, which we announced late last year, very competitively priced. We've got the 7900 XT and 7900 XTX, which is our flagship GPUs at the moment. And if any of you are working with us very closely, you would have had an opportunity to receive some of this hardware from us to develop on. The RDNA 3 architecture as well, so the chiplet breakthrough design that was utilized for Ryzen CPUs have now translated over to GPU. It's a technology and it's a method of packaging that can be applied on GPUs as well. And on screen you see some of the benefits that we've gained from this design versus the previous RDNA 2 architecture. So more on developer support and what our teams can do for you guys. So ISV stands for Independent Software Developers. That's many of you here today. And we aim to provide the best developer support across AMD PC gaming platforms. And what our mission is for developers such as yourselves to make the best possible games for all gamers out there across the world. And we'd like to help you bring the best performance and the best visual fidelity when developing your games. We're based globally. We have teams all around the world. The main hubs are Asia Pacific. So, my colleague Elliot Liu is based here in Taiwan. And a couple of us here today is based in Tokyo. And also we have a team of developer relations managers and dev tech engineers in Greater China, as well as Europe and North America. So this is some of the support that we offer developers. And if you are developing full-sized, PC gaming experiences, we encourage you to get in touch with us. And what we like to do, and this is how we can help, is to evaluate early builds of your games. We have a testing lab across the globe, and we can benchmark your games across many devices, PC setups we have in our testing labs. We also consult in implementation of our tech, like FidelityFX, and most commonly used from that is FidelityFX Super Resolution, or otherwise known as FSR. And we do have a driver team that always aims to optimize for the latest games. So if if a title is coming out and we want to fully support that title, we'll assign a driver team to ensure that there is a driver update at the same timing as the game's launched to make sure that any issues are resolved and we have optimized as best as possible on our side. And yes, upscaling technology, FidelityFX Super Resolution. We're currently on FSR 2. And we've made announcements in the past regarding FSR3, which we're currently disclosing to some select developers. But FSR in total is supported in over 250 games. Out of that, FSR2 in around 115 games. So it's widely implemented across many AAA titles around the globe. And the beauty of FSR and all of our, FidelityFX is that it's transferable, it's applicable across not just AMD's hardware, but on any hardware, and including consoles as well. So definitely visit gpuopen.com and have a look for yourselves there. All the tools are available there. And if you have any questions regarding anything on gpuopen.com, please let us know. It's all open source and it's all free for you to use. And I'd like to hand over to my colleague Elliot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yoshino sir. 大家好，我是 Elliot。可能就是我们在场有一些老朋友，但也有一些新朋友。但是我想提的就是，先再一次感谢 Yoshino 上，因为我把他邀请来到台湾，然后让大家有机会，第一个先认识他，因为他是在这个业界蛮资深的。然后我们去，比如说日本或者是欧洲，在出差的时候发现其实日本的这些开发者很喜欢他，因为他帮忙他把游戏在欧美在销售，因为大家也知道，就日本人对跨区域就跨国的销售这件事情，其实蛮需要其他资源的整合，所以大家有机会可能等一下结束的时候，也可以跟他要个名片，或者跟他交流一下，怎么样做一个好的 game 在这个跨国的销售这部分。然后我自己本身就是我大概也是差不多将近20年的经验，但前半年大概都做哈维，后面我就是回到台湾以后开始跟游戏这边比较多接触。那后面这部分我大概会讲说我们这几年怎么样跟游戏开发者一起合作，然后尤其在我的角色上面，我怎么样把借由 AMD 的技术把让各位站在巨人的肩膀上这件事情。那刚刚也许我稍微讲一下，就是如果各位有印象，刚刚一开始其实有几个画面，会提到，为什么 AMD 有汽车，或者是就是比如说 Tesla， 怎么会有人去想在 Tesla 上面玩游戏这件事情？我一开始有觉得很想不透，然后还有现在大家有 Steam Deck 或者是 ROG 的 Ellie 这些 device， 所以 AMD 其实比你想象中的还要再更深入在你的生活当中，只是你也许不一定知道。然后回过头游戏产业这件事情，举例来说，有些游戏其实是 AAA 大作，在一开始它可能叫好，可是不叫座。大部分的原因是什么？也许大家知道，就是有些人在行销上面有更多改进的空间。我想，我这边这部分短时间我会跟大家提一下，我们在去年跟台湾在地的业者怎么做一些合作。OK，当然回过头来，对我们来讲，第一件事就是我想要道德来讲，第一件事我就希望各位做的游戏能够卖得好，你们卖得好，这个产业才会持续的蓬勃发展，这是我们一起要达到的一个目标。然后再往回推，我希望能够，在我们的 device 上面，能够让你们所有玩家都能够 enjoy。就像我刚刚讲的，在 handheld、Steam Deck， 你想不到，也许某一天，因为不好意思，今天我不能讲说下一个产品会什么时间发生，或什么时候会用。但 however， 我们希望能够把底层所有硬体的效能能够呈现在你的游戏上面。那当然 ，eventually 我们希望能够一起来共同行销。那这是我们的一个大家最熟悉，就一开始提到就是有关 PC 的，这是一般的玩家很容易接触到的。那当然我刚刚提到怎么样站在巨人的肩膀上，第一个我有将近1.7亿的玩家，然后再使用 AMD 的软体，当然必须要用 AMD 的，包含这边可能前面有讲到一些跨平台的资源。那当然还有一些大家刚刚前面才很熟悉这个角色，其实就是去年我跟他们Acme 一起合作，然后也让他们直接 show up 在 AMD 的 website 官网。那 只要有 AMD device 就会有需要安装驱动，所以当然就可以 leverage 到我们这些既有的受众。然后当然还有官网，所以各位可以看到，像昨天也许你有注意到 Pharmacy 出现在最右边。那这边当然有一些AAA content， 因为不是台湾，我就不用跟他讲。然后像 Bridge Curse， 这是他们的那个第一代。那各位等一下如果有机会，或者是也许都玩过，那可以再试试。然后在就是右边出去的那个门口，这是他们第二代。那我们持续有透过 FSR 跟其他技术的合作。那将来也同样会呈现在我们的官网上面。那当然 Asterigo， 那持续我们会跟在地的游戏的创作者一起合作，所以这边会呈现出来，除了官网，然后还有包含像是我们有其他技术的 landing page、blog， 那还有一些新闻稿，甚至其他媒体的秀出，那就可以把各位你辛辛苦苦创作的游戏，第一个把它呈现在一个跨国际的平台上面，让你的第一个把你的价值呈现出来，第二个能够让更多人知道你的游戏，然后甚至把它加入他的游戏清单里面，甚至去进一步下去做购买。这个是Pharmacy， 我跟他合作完以后，我们就会请他提供给我一些美术素材，然后把它做成一个 2D， 然后显示在类似 Twitter 或者是我们一些像显卡销售，它其实会有彩盒，所以我会把它 print 出来，然后放在彩盒上面。那当然这部分可能就要看说Pharmacy 就是你的游戏，假设你有 target 在比如说欧洲哪一个国家，那我们可能可以讨论一下看当地的销售是怎么样的程度去做一个比较密切的结合。我想这个可以参考一下。然后当然跨国性的 Twitter， 抱歉这个 resolution 可能没太清楚。第一个是我们自己的 AMD Gaming 的 Twitter account， 然后第二个我没记错的话应该是，哇真的很难看清楚，抱歉。但它基本上就是有我印象中有 India， 然后有 Russia， 然后有France， 还有其他国家，就是 AMD 其实有在各个 region 有自己经营的 Twitter account， 当然不止 Twitter account 啦 ，Twitch 啦，还有Facebook， 所以我们有 allocate 一些资源，然后下去经营这些 social media 的平台。那各位呈现好的游戏，我们就可以帮忙协助大家去做一个更大幅度的宣传。OK， 那当然大家很熟悉，你的游戏上线以后，你的发行商如果有资源的话，它其实会帮你协助在所有社交平台去做宣传。所以我们其实也会挑选比如说100万以上的 YouTuber 或者是 Twitch owner， 然后下去针对你的游戏在某一个 region， 你希望做一个比较大量的宣传的时候，我们可以找这样子的程度去这样的模式去经营它。那像这个是我以 Pharmacy 为一个例子，然后我们在东南亚做的，那包含 Facebook 它做 online 的，就是请网红去开箱你的游戏，然后去试玩。那像或者是在 Twitch channel 也有，所以这些都是在regional 我们去挑选一些比较知名的网红，让他能够针对各位辛苦创立的这些 IP， 然后把它呈现出来。当然，我们透过一些某种程度的商业结合，就是我也希望能够透过这样的角色去呈现出我们硬体的优势，然后主要是能够让 end user 找到一个适合的价位带，然后让他能够切入你的游戏去游玩。那当然我们有自己的 reward 的 page， 这个主要在于它可以协助我们比如说当我们有一些 AAA content 或者是有一些 regional 就有些国家是可以做一些单独的执行，也就是说你的游戏产生出来以后，我们去跟你买 game key， 然后在 AMD.com 上面 end user 买的我的显卡或者是其他产品可以兑换你的 game key， 那同时间我们会收集一些 user data。那我相信这些东西除了在前段帮忙你做行销，甚至这边有一些销售，然后还有一些后面背后的一些 user data， 我们可以协助做一些 collection。那这当中提的就是一个 AMD， 那也是刚刚Yoshino 上提到，就是 FSR 是我们这几年一个 focus。 在近期我们也会接入到下一个时代的FSR。其实各位看到 Asterigo 啊，他们团队虽然比起某些中小型来的再更 strong 一点，但他们也很专注在他们的 IP。然后我们其实合作了我想那个也将近大概有2-3年左右，然后跟着他们一起。所以他一开始啊，其实他也就是一般这种 FPS game 啊，或者是这种你在玩的时候，其实会受限于你的硬体效能。那对游戏创作者来讲，当然是卖越多的 game key 是你才能够 break even。所以我们从技术的角度去切进去，比如说 upsampling 这些技术，让原本可能你的游戏必须要在500块左右的这样的硬体的配置，然后让它能够有机会让在200块。也就是说，你本来只能拉到那个顶峰20%的玩家，可是现在你可能有机会接触中间甚至更下面，就是比如说我们像一般的 gaming data 那个电竞笔电这样子的游戏玩家，我们都可以接触得到。然后另外 FSR 最大好处就是它不绑硬体。其实 AMD 的在经营开发者这个社群的时候，它其实就是 open source。我不怕你用其他的 device， 所以其实我们甚至昨天的有一些玩家，甚至游戏开发者，他其实甚至把他的游戏 pose 在 Switch 上面，然后还 enable FSR。那当然我们本身除了PC 以外，还有那个Xbox 或 PlayStation 都可以 support。那这个是我们会有既有的比如说新闻稿或者是媒体的邀稿的时候，就会把你的 IP 呈现在这些比较像台湾可能也就是巴哈，我们会有甚至其他我们自己经营的社团去做一些行销。那这是有关刚刚新闻稿的部分。那在我的大概会举这几个例子跟大家分享。那有机会大家麻烦可以移驾到就是门口右边去试一下他们新的游戏，然后也给他们一些 feedback。那如果说我们有更多合作空间的话，也欢迎各位就是主要扫这 QR code 是你可以留下你 email。那我们有一些 hardware seeding program， 我们有一些共同行销的机会。那也请各位给我一个机会，让我们可以持续联系，然后我们来看怎么样一起来把这个产业做得更蓬勃，尤其对台湾在地的开发的 IP。谢谢。
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. It's always nice to be here in Taipei. My name's Oscar. I come from the game engineering team at AMD. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the engineering side of what we do with game developers. I manage the game engineering organization for Asia, except China. And we work along with our business team members to work with the game developers across the different regions and help them make their games all they can be and maximize the potential that all of the different games can have on AMD platforms. In general, right now, the year 2023 is a great year to be a game developer. It's now easier than ever to get your game, to get your contents in front of as many people as you can. Platforms like Steam have made it really easy to publish your game. If you have a publisher, that's great. If not, indie games are now easier to make, easier than ever. But also, there's more competition. And hardware, even though it's more powerful than ever, it's more difficult to use properly than ever. We've come a long way from just having a simple API in which you just say draw triangle and you get a triangle drawn on the screen to the very complex APIs that we have currently, like DirectX 12, that enable you to develop and show very interesting contents to your users but the learning curve is getting higher and higher every year. So we at AMD, we want to help you in this journey. We want to help users, we want to help developers leverage the hardware, leverage the technology that you have available to you, so you can focus on making great games and be able to use the hardware to its full potential. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit difficult to use. It doesn't matter if you are working with us, if you are a partner, if you're partnering with our business team, or if you're an indie game developer, or if you're partnering with a competition. Our goal at AMD is to enable developers by giving them better technology so they can make better games and eventually have happier users. We have the same goals as everybody else. And to do this, we focus our efforts on 4 different areas. Advocacy, showing users what AMD technology is all about. Optimizing performance, making sure that games work as good as they can on our hardware. This can be done by our team, by optimizing our drivers, but it's also done by game developers, by properly using the hardware that you guys have. To do this, we achieve it through education, explaining developers how to properly use all the technologies that you have at your hands, and fueling all of this by a comprehensive set of tools, a very useful toolbox that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and testing, thorough testing, to ensure, once again, that your games run as good as they can. Not just on our hardware, but on users' PCs, which is what counts. All of this is powered by our website, which is called GPU Open. If you haven't had the chance, you should take a look, gpuopen.com. It's our website, the website of the game engineering team, where you can find all of this information, all of the tools available immediately. We don't have any paywalls, you don't have to register, you don't have to do anything. You can just go to the website and start consuming all of our content. In terms of education, we have very comprehensive guides as to how to optimize your games for DirectX 3D12 in general, and in particular for AMD hardware. We also have comprehensive guides on how to optimize your game if you're using Unreal Engine, very popular right now. We also have guides for optimizing on our CPUs, optimizing for the Ryzen CPUs. And a lot of tools, a lot of plugins for Unreal Engine to help you increase the performance of your games on AMD hardware. On the tools side, as I mentioned previously, making games is easier than ever, but it's also more difficult than ever. Having a good set of tools is more important than ever to understand what your game is doing, to understand if the performance bottlenecks that your game is having, where they're coming from, how to fix them. And to do so, we have a series of tools. All of this, once again, available on gpuopen.com. The first and most famous of our tools is the Radeon GPU Profiler that you can use to analyze in depth what's going on inside when you're rendering one frame of a game. There's many other tools by other vendors that do similar things. You may be familiar with, for example, PIX. PIX is a famous tool by Microsoft that does something similar. And RGP, the Radeon GPU Profiler, has a similar goal, but gives you much more detailed information when it's running on an AMD GPU. It gives you timing, pipeline stalls, barriers, instruction timing, a lot of information that is only available if you are running on an AMD GPU using our tool. This, along with the tools of other vendors, you should use to properly optimize your game, make sure that, that you have no bottlenecks, that your performance is wherever you expect it to be, and that you're not going to have any surprises when you actually launch your game to users. In addition, we have other tools like the Radeon Memory Visualizer. This is a tool that helps you visualize, as the name says, visualize the memory, how the memory inside the GPU, how the VRAM is being used by the app. You can use it to detect potentially memory leaks. You can understand how much memory your game is consuming. You can take different snapshots of different parts of the game, or even on different systems, see how the memory is being used by comparing them across different scenarios. We have the Radeon GPU Analyzer, which is meant to compile and analyze shaders. So the programs that run on your GPU, you can analyze them using this tool. You can view how the machine code is going to be generated, how the instructions are going to be executed inside the GPU, especially optimized for our latest series RDNA 3 hardware. But you can even see how it's going to run on RDNA 3 hardware, even with older hardware. The GPU analyzer will give you an accurate representation of what it's going to look like when you run on the latest hardware. And you can use this to tune your different shaders to ensure that they run as well as they can be. Now on to the more recent tools. We have the Ray Tracing Analyzer. This is for games that are using ray tracing, one of the most famous, one of the most popular features right now, but also one of the easiest to misuse, because with ray tracing is very computationally expensive, and it's very easy for you to tank your game performance if you misuse ray tracing in your game. So this is where the Radeon Ray Tracing Analyzer comes in. You can use it to analyze your scene. You can use it to analyze how your ray tracing acceleration structures, how your ray tracing information is being processed, and you can see if you need to do any changes, if you need to make any adjustments to improve the performance of your game when it's running on ray tracing. That's in terms of tools. And finally, the cornerstone of what the game engineering teams does is in terms of technology. We have several libraries, several packages, several tools that you can put inside of your game to make your game run faster, to make your game look better, and eventually to make a game better and more graphically pleasing for your users. Our general idea using of these technologies is that we are committed to open technologies. None of our technologies are dependent on AMD hardware. All of our technologies are open source. You can see all the source code. It's on GitHub. You can see what it's doing. You can modify it to your needs. There's nothing being hidden from anybody here. And all of this technology works on any hardware, not just AMD hardware. So when you choose to integrate our technologies into your game, you can be sure that the work that you're doing is not being used exclusively on a subset of your users, those who use AMD hardware, but that it's also useful for every single user of your game. All of this technology, we put it under the umbrella of the FidelityFX name, and we just last week, we re-released all of our technologies under the name of FidelityFX SDK. Previously, before the FidelityFX SDK, all of the different tools were separate. Each one had different coding conventions, different types of compatibility. We have unified all of that. We made sure that everything has the same coding conventions, that everything is easy to use, that everything is properly documented, and we re-released that now as FidelityFX SDK. One of the best things about FidelityFX SDK, it's that the different modules that I'm going to introduce to you, they work completely independently one from the other. So you can just use, if you just want to use one of the modules, you can just use one. You don't need to put everything inside your game. You can just use what you need. You can modify it as you want. Once again, this is all open source. And you can just focus on what's important for your game. Here are the modules of FidelityFX SDK. We have modules for a variety of use cases. The general idea behind FidelityFX SDK is to do some common tasks that may be tricky, that may have performance pitfalls, that it may be easy to make mistakes when integrating them. And we release them for you to use and for you to put inside of your game, so you don't have to worry about making a well-performing, for example, lens filter or a blur filter. You don't have to worry about doing these very expensive, very computationally expensive processing, because we have them right here ready for you to use. I'm going to go one by one in detail about the effects that we have. First one, we have the depth of field effect. This is a new effect that we just launched. And this is a great example of what FidelityFX does for you. So games have this very common need, depth of field. Depth of field is the effect that you have when you focus your camera on, for example, a character, and everything that is behind the character or that is in front of the character becomes blurred. So that's a really nice effect for games to have. It makes them much more realistic. It makes them much more nice to look at. But this is an effect that is pretty computationally expensive, because you have to run it on the entire screen. It's something that you have to do for every pixel. And if you're first trying to do depth of field for your game and you start trying to work and make your own program for this, it's very easy to have a lot of bottlenecks, to find bottlenecks, to find out that this processing is actually very expensive and that you're gonna need to optimize your program. So instead of wasting time thinking about how to make this effect, instead of wasting time thinking how to optimize this effect, we have this effect available for you right now. The depth of field effect that we have on FidelityFX SDK is a physically correct depth of field effect. It's optimized for speed, especially on AMD hardware. And the blurring pass is done in a single pass, which, if you're familiar with graphical performance, this is probably the most expensive part. And being able to do it on a single pass means that it's really fast. So you just take it. You just take the code, you just put it in your game, you try it out. If it works, great. If you need to change something, Once again, the source code is available for you, so you can try it out and change it however you like. In general, this is the general theme of all the effects that we have on FidelityFX SDK. Things that are very common needs for game developers, and we have them available for you to use them right away without having to worry how to optimize them, so you can focus your time on making a better game. Another new effect that we have is the lens effect, or the various lens effects. Once again, these are post-processing effects that can make your game look much nicer. And once again, the effects that we have are optimized for speed for running on AMD hardware. Right now we have film grain, chromatic aberration, and vignette. And we are expecting to launch more lens effects in the future. We also have blur. Blur is a very common operation that games need to do. There are many ways of doing blur. It's very easy, once again, to tank your game performance when doing full screen effects like blur. The FidelityFX blur effect, once again, is very, very heavily optimized for AMD hardware. You can run blur operations on what we call kernels, as small as 3 by 3 pixels up to 21 by 21 pixels. So you can do blur operations that are very, very small, almost unnoticeable, to very large 21 by 21 pixels. Moving on to some more specialized effects, we have the denoiser. The denoiser is an effect that you use when you have an image that has a lot of noise. That's the name denoiser. And when do you have an image with a lot of noise? You get an image with a lot of noise when you use effects that are probabilistic, that are not applied to every pixel. I'm talking mainly reflections, I'm talking mainly ray tracing effects, etc. When you do ray tracing, you can get some, if you want to apply the ray tracing effect to every single pixel in the screen, is going to be very expensive. So what you do is you just apply it to a subset of the pixels, which is going to give you an accurate representation of what's going to happen, but just on those pixels. So the image is going to look very noisy. And you run our denoiser, and the quality of the image is greatly improved. This is very useful for shadows as well. And especially if you're working with ray tracing, the denoiser is something that you really want to take a look at. Moving forward, once again on the global illumination topic, we have screen space reflections. Screen space reflections is a technique that you can use to calculate reflections on a surface. As you see in the screenshot, there's reflections on the chessboard, but instead of rendering the scene twice, once upwards and once downwards, you can apply the screen space reflections algorithm on each one of the pixels that is going to be reflected and find what is the correct reflection for that particular pixel. This is a very complex algorithm. It's very difficult to get it right, and even more difficult to get it well performing. We got you covered. The FidelityFX screen space reflections algorithm is very optimized, works very well, and has been used by many dozens of games to deliver high quality reflections. Another very useful effect that we have is our sharpening effect, especially when you're doing things like TAA, like temporal anti-aliasing. They can make the game look better, but at the cost of making the game look blurrier. when you do anti-aliasing, you want to resharpen the image that you get. And that's what we have, CAS, Contrast Adaptive Sharpening, available for you. It's a very good effect that we use, that it's not just available as standalone, but it's also part of other effects like FidelityFX Super Resolution that I'm going to talk about a little bit afterwards. The next effect that we have, the downsampler, is a very common operation that you need when you are calculating you're calculating lighting, when you're calculating, there are many effects that require you to have an image downsampled and have the entire, what is called the MIP map chain, the entire MIP map chain of a texture or a render texture. And it's a very common operation that games have to do. And what people usually do is that they get the full image, the full resolution image, they downsample it once, and then they downsample it again, and then they downsample it again to create the entire chain of downsampled images. This is very costly. This is very, very costly. What our SPD effect, single pass downsampler, as the name reflects, does all of the downsampling in one single pass. So not only it's easier to use, but also it performs much better. Sometimes giving you 35% performance improving in that particular pass. Other effects, general effects that anybody can use, parallel sort, when you are working with particles, or when you are working with something in your compute shaders that you need to sort them. Sorting is an operation that is traditionally done on the CPU, but if your data is already in the GPU, instead of bringing everything back to system memory, sorting it, and then sending it back to the video card, you could use our parallel sort effect that will sort your data for you. Once again, what you do with this is up to you. It has gotten a lot of usage in particle simulations. We also have variable shading. Variable shading is a technique that you can use to focus your rendering processing power where it's needed the most. So you can use our effect to detect which parts of the image are going to have less detail, which parts of the image are going to have less contrast. And you can use the DirectX 12 feature called variable rate shading to dedicate less resources to drawing those pixels and instead focus that into the pixels, into the areas of the screen that are going to have much more detail. So properly applied, this can greatly improve the performance of your game without incurring a high cost in terms of visual quality. And finally, the most famous of our effects right now, FidelityFX Super Resolution. Initially version 1, now version 2. We announced version 3. We hope we can show it to you shortly. And the entire purpose of Super Resolution is to show images of great quality at high frame rates, at high resolution, high frame rate. But usually resolution and frame rate, you have to make a balance. You have to choose. If you get higher resolution, you're going to get lower frame rate. Or if you want a higher frame rate, you have to loosen quality. So instead of having to make those trade-offs, you can use the FidelityFX Super Resolution effects. And what you do is that you render your game at a lower resolution. So in principle, you're using a lower resolution, but you do it intelligently. And by doing so, when you apply the upscaling algorithm takes the lower resolution and makes it bigger and makes it look, puts it in the native resolution of your monitor. But it's not just upscaling, just making the picture larger and more blocky. Since you're using FidelityFX Super Resolution, if you properly implement it, if you properly use it, you can get the same or very similar graphical results as you would have gotten with native resolution, but at a much lower rendering cost, which means higher frame rate. Initially, FSR 1.0 was a very simple upscaling algorithm. FSR 2.0 uses information from the current frame as well as previous frames, as well as motion vectors, a lot of information to be able to more intelligently upscale the image and deliver a higher quality upscaled image for your users. Once again, all of this is open source. This is not locked to AMD's hardware. You can use this on any hardware that you want. It runs on any hardware. Of course, it's optimized for AMD hardware, but if you choose to use our technologies, you can reach every single one of your users, regardless of whether or not they're a customer of ours. So that is what I wanted to talk to you today. I would like to once again take the chance to invite you to visit our website, gpuopen.com. Take a look at all of the resources that I mentioned, all the tools, all of the education, blog posts, and of course, our FidelityFX SDK tools. See if they're useful for your game, and hopefully make better games and deliver better games to have happier users. If you have any questions about these technologies, you can feel free to reach out to us, either through our local AMD contacts or directly through gpuopen.com. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention.